This week we received our first fruit trees, and I've been doing a lot of Christmas cooking, including some traditional British pork pies and some Swedish lussekatter. Also, Stina has been doing battle with the slugs. Hi, I'm Cameron. This is Stina, that's Suki, and that's Bramble. We've been renting flats most of our lives, and now in our early 40s we finally managed to buy our forever home. It's not much, only a fifth of an acre, and it's seen far better days, but it's our little piece of rural southwest Scotland. We're excited to start its transformation into a cosy cottage and food forest garden that we know it can become. So welcome to Bramble Cottage.
This is my first planned purchase towards establishing my new food forest here at Bramble Cottage. I'm starting with 4 trees, 2 for this main lawn area and 2 to go up the sides of the wall on the other side of the house. I've selected an apple bountiful as an espalier tree to go on the wall of the house in one area, and then this cherry sunburst to go on another area of wall as a fan. And then this apple red Falstaff will be the biggest tree on a large rootstock to go in the corner of the garden where we're standing now. And then finally a Japanese methley plum on a pixie rootstock, so that will be a dwarfed tree, and that will go on the other side of the lawn. A couple of days after the trees first arrived, I had some free time to go around and plant them, and it was a bit milder for being out, which was nice. This is the spot for the cherry sunburst. It's a southeast facing wall and it's right near the front door, so we're hoping that it'll benefit from the cherry blossom looking really nice as well as the fruit later on. Also, growing a cherry up against the wall makes it easier for us to net the tree so that we have a chance to get some cherries before the birds do. This compost bin was here when we arrived and it's full, and we don't see the point in having a compost bin here where there's currently so little plant growth. So we want to remove it, but I was also hoping I might get some nice organic material out of it to go in the holes for the trees, because I'm short of that kind of thing at the minute. As with so many parts of this site, we're kind of becoming accustomed to finding strange things buried in places, so this one was no exception. Quite a few bits of rubbish and some what seemed to be children's muddle making toys. There's a certain strange satisfaction to doing so much litter picking around the site and gradually bringing things back to a more wholesome ecosystem. Do more of the many random box plants being removed to a more suitable location, what I hope will one day be our shade garden, and then that makes a bit more space here for something more productive. This was an experiment to see if I'd end up hitting concrete footings, but with all being well, it's the spot for the second wall tree, which is the bountiful apple. That's a cooker that also has a sweet flavour, so it should be multi-purpose for us. I plan to thickly mulch all of these beds in time, so I'm planting all of these trees at the upper limit of the soil line as best I can.
So first up for me is the mackerel, which is kind of it's a standard one which we have on our Swedish Christmas table, which is basically just mackerel with a few spices, bit of onion, nothing too complicated, but it's delicious. It's just amazing, and it takes about 10 minutes to make. So here you go. Now I do hear a few different recipes for how to do this. Personally I just like it simple. Some people will add in bay leaves and whole peppercorns into the mix there, maybe even some allspice. Personally I just like salt, pepper, onion, oil. Just keep it simple.
The Swedish Christmas spread is a cold buffet, so we have lots of little dishes like this that are put out on the table on the day, and then we eat them with boiled potatoes and bread.
And that's it done. Ready to be capped off and put in the fridge, waiting for Christmas. Right, next on my agenda are lussekatter, which are very traditional Swedish Christmas bread, essentially. It's an enriched bread, so I guess it's a brioche. Anyway, here I'm just breaking down the saffron with a little bit of sugar so that I get the most out of the saffron, because this is quite expensive and I want to make sure that I'm getting the maximum from it. So here I'm just going to warm up a little bit of the milk with some of the butter in the microwave, get it going, and then I'm going to pop it on the hob to finish warming through. And yes, that was Suki. She spent the day in the kitchen with me. So now that I've warmed the milk and butter through, so it's a nice mix, I'm just dividing it in two. One half is going to have the saffron put in it so it infuses nicely, and the other half is going to get the yeast. That's the yeast going very nicely. It's all ready to go in now, so ready to bring the dough together. So the original recipe called for kvarg, but that's kind of difficult to get where I am. So I'm using creme fraiche instead, which is not far off the same fat content, which is it'll work just as well. Time to let that rest for about an hour. So I get about 48 or so pieces out of this. So this is a very important part. I'm going to make them into pretty traditional shapes. They never look that great when they're in the raw form, but when they rise they look absolutely fine. So you can be quite flexible with this. Dead easy, little S shapes. Once I've shaped all of my pieces, I'm going to leave them for about an hour to rise again. So this is after letting them rise for an hour, and I'm just going to put in the raisins. You have to really push them right on down in there, because otherwise you'll just find them on the baking tray at the end. At least this way they'll definitely stay on the bun. And then for about 10 to 15 minutes, I think these ones are about 12 minutes. There we go, that's them all done. Just need to let them cool and try and not eat them all before Christmas. I have to say, these are absolutely amazing fresh from the oven.
The last two trees are for the large lawn area, and I started out by marking where I wanted them to go using the scale plan that I did a few weeks ago. This was to make sure that they had a decent amount of space around all sides for the spread that we're expecting them to develop, and then also leave as much space as possible for other trees to go in the future. I'm wanting to gradually develop a layered system with this as the canopy layer and then as many shrubs and other plants underneath as I can fit. I'm temporarily returning the turf to protect the soil line of the tree until I can get some mulch down properly. We'll also be adding stakes and some biodegradable rabbit guards that I've managed to find once they arrive. So that's the largest tree, the apple red Falstaff, now in place. And finally, this will be the spot for the Japanese plum, which is Prunus salicina, and I have the cultivar methley on a pixie rootstock, which will keep it smaller for this space. This is a tree that I'm not at all familiar with, but it was recommended by Alan Carter, who writes a blog called A Food Forest in Your Garden, and he has a food forest up in Aberdeen, which is much colder than here. So if he's managed to get really good results with it, I thought it'd be worth a try. Every new tree and plant we put into this lawn area, we see the wildlife coming in from the edges to investigate and start to live there. It's really exciting. So I'm looking forward to the year to come, and I'm just hoping these trees really like their new home here.
Next up is pork pies. I'm very rough and ready with this. I know a lot of people get very hung up on how they need to be done, but I don't think you need to be overly precise. The one thing that I would say was, I wish that I'd made a little bit more pastry, like 50% more pastry, and this would have been fine. One of the features of the pork pie is the jelly. So now I'm just going to be soaking down some gelatin leaves and making some stock that's going to get poured in after the pies are cooked. Another key feature of the pork pie is the hot water pastry, and that's a bit different to a normal pastry because you're actually doing it with hot water. A normal pastry, you're trying to keep it cool and light and all of that. This, you go straight in with the fats, hot in the water, a little bit of salt, flour, and then you've got to work it really fast because as soon as it gets cold, it's going to be difficult to work. What I tend to do is I work out my portions of the pastry and I put them back into the warm pan where it came from, so they can stay warm till I'm ready for them. And this is where I wish I'd made myself a little bit more pastry, because you'd want that to be a bit thicker. On this one I'm kind of struggling to get it to stretch all the way around. I normally make my pork pies pretty messy, but it's usually a thicker pastry than this. And into the oven for the first bake. You normally cook slightly higher for about 30 minutes, and then you'll take them out, put some egg on them, and then put them back in for an hour at a lower temperature. And this is the finished product. This is after I've baked them for the full length of time, let them cool a little bit, added the jelly and the stock, and this is the finished product. Not the best that I've ever made, but to be honest, they taste pretty great, so I'm happy.
A few weeks ago I commented that my newly planted winter veg were being devastated by slugs in this garden because the ecosystem's really out of balance. And then Life on the Croft, another YouTube channel that's surprisingly local to us, suggested that we try nematodes. Honestly, I don't know why I hadn't thought of it, and now the season's moved on, it's far too cold, it's past the time when it should work, but I thought it was worth a shot just to try and rescue what's left. So this is a nematode powder that I've ordered, mixed with water, and then I'm showering the already sodden and cold soil with that, and we'll see if it works. I much prefer biological pest controls like this for balancing the ecosystem, but my fantasy was so full of ducks and frogs that it just didn't occur to me to try nematodes instead. And that's despite the fact that I'd been researching this exact method to rid our bathroom of slugs during our super wet August earlier this year. Happily, those slugs have since moved on, possibly into the veggie patch.
So the final thing that I'm going to be making today is the Swedish Christmas ham. This goes on the Swedish Christmas table cold, and it's kind of a cold serving, so I can make this well in advance, get it ready, get it in the freezer, and just take it out a couple of days before. So this is a really handy one. First things first is to boil the ham. So I'm going to get it up to boiling temperature and add in some herbs and spices. Then just gently boil it for a couple of hours. So whilst that's boiling, we're going to make up the covering for this. This is a Swedish mustard mixed with egg and breadcrumb and a little bit of sugar. So it's a little bit sweet. It's the Swedish mustard is also sweet. So it's quite a sweet kind of crust that you put on the outside. Then it's back in the oven at a reasonably high temperature for about 15 minutes just to cook that crust through and brown it ever so slightly. This will be served sliced with buttered rye bread, potatoes, a few other pork cold cuts and some fish dishes, as well as beer and schnapps.